out of the last 5, and I played them all morning 9:45.
Oh my
goodness. Nice. He getting it in.
Yes.
Yeah, I got a bunch of guys that like to play. And I mean 25, 30 guys. So all you do is send a text who's in, and then they would hit 12 guys. You know, you put a couple dollars on the side, everybody get in the games, and you know, little competition.
No, that's
all right. We live, fellas. We are live.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, look, I wanna say, man, thank you so much, man. We got some true dudes in here today, man. If you don't know who they are, then you know you'll figure it out as we go, because these are some true. Well, everybody on our show is a legend, but these are truly legends to Vernon and myself coming up in the 757, and I want to introduce obviously Hampton High, a great 757 legend, my man Robert Banks here. I got my man Suffolk, Virginia, 757 great Reggie Langhorne and Virginia Beach finest, originally from Norfolk. Most people don't know. DJ, my man Dozier. I got that right, didn't I, DJ?
Oh, you right on.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. See, they put you over in that beach area. They don't know you really from Norfolk. There's a difference. There's a little difference.
Northview High.
Yeah, man. So no, but you know what? I really, one of the reasons we started this conversation, man, because we really, everywhere I travel, everywhere I'm sure you guys travel, everybody's talking about, you from that 757 area? I'm like, yeah, that's where I'm from, man. And they always know that, you know, in our journey, we produce great high school sports. And so, you know, I start off with you, Robert, man. I'm gonna just be very front and blank, just very honest with you, man. I know when I was young coming up, you know, you were in the pros in high school to me. You know what I mean? Like you were already in the pros when I was in high school. So it's like, I didn't even know what Redskins or nothing. All I know is, oh, we got to go see Robert Banks Friday night because he's the #1 player in the state. And then flipping over to DJ, when we seen DJ and Robert Banks, that was like, you know, Pittsburgh and the Ravens going at it. It's like, and this high school football, we standing around waving autographs because the greats are here. And so Robert, man, talk to us about a little bit about playing football in the 757, man. What was that journey like? Because I know you originally went to Peninsula Catholic High School and transferred to Hampton High. A lot of people don't know that. And then that's when it started picking up for you. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, you know, the area has a rich high school football history. I mean, when you're talking 757, you're talking anything from Williamsburg, Virginia, all the way to the Beach District. So, you know, small town, everybody got behind high school football. You know, you were out representing your community. And for me, you know, growing up, you know, I grew up off of Shell Road on LaGarde Drive between Powhatan and Chesterfield. You know, the alley that ran behind our house used to dead into the post office. So if you know anything about that area, that width area, then, you know, when I say Chesterfield and Powhatan Parkway and LaGarde, Shell Road and Victoria, you know where we're at. A lot of history, you know, exactly, you know, and for me, you know, when growing up, you know, like any small town kid, you get out in the streets, you know, you playing sandlot football, you playing basketball from sun up to sundown. And, you know, growing up in that Hampton High district, you know, you hear about guys like Woodrow Wilson and Simon Gupton and, you know, Dwight Stevenson, and you just want to be a part of that. You know, and throughout our district, you know, Lafayette, you got Ron Springs, you got Mel Gray, you know, you got Al Toon. It goes on, and to, you know, not, you know, Kenny Easley, you know, back then when the NCAA controlled who was on TV, you know, you catch some UCLA games, and then all of a sudden you hear, hey, this guy Kenny Easley, you know, he out there in California now, and he's from, you know, the Beach District. So growing up, you know, with that type of history, you know, all I wanted to do was get to Hampton High and be mentioned in the same breath, you know, as some of the guys that came through Hampton High. My parents, you know, I went to Wythe Elementary, and we were bused, you know, busing came in and they bused us over to, you know, Tucker Caps, you know, over off of Todd Lane. And so I was over there for a while. And while they're playing Little League football, I played with Gary London and Tim Roy, you know, who went on to have great high school and college careers. Yeah. And you know, during the midst of that, you know, my parents were big on education. And, you know, they weren't too cool with us being bused all the way over to Tucker Caps. So they pulled us out of public school and I went to St. Mary's down in Phoebus. Okay. So I would, put on my light blue t-shirt, dark blue pants, and a tie and go to St. Mary's, but when I came home, I'm back in my hood. So all the guys growing up, with me, they knew of me. And of course they went from elementary school to Jefferson Davis, where they had, middle school football. Well, I didn't go to Jeff Davis. But when I got done with St. Mary's, I went to Peninsula Catholic. So basketball, I was playing basketball, right? But still in the back of my head, it was like, I got to get to Hampton High. I got to get to Hampton High. I got to play football. So I convinced my parents in the 10th grade to allow me to transfer to Hampton High. And man, I was just trying to be a part of a program that was already happening way before I got there. And, that was my opportunity, and I made the most of it. And, I was just fortunate enough to have, to be in the right school district, to play for a legendary coach in a legendary program. And, I worked hard, because, back then, again, you just wanted to be amongst the names of the greats in the area. And it all happened for me with that, man. But, it's just that working hard, wanting to be a part of something bigger than myself, and just doing my part with my teammates. And that's the thing about Hampton High, people don't understand. It just won't one guy. I was fortunate enough to get some headlines, but every week, man, it was somebody else making the big play, somebody else making the big play. And I looked at your podcast with Terry Kirby, and they were talking about, they didn't know much about what was happening in the Beach District. We didn't either, because we had to focus on the Hampton District, because the showdown at the end of the year was going to be against Bethel. And typically, whoever won that game, right, because both teams would roll into that game undefeated, right? City was shut down, standing room only, right? So a lot of times, by the time we got to the playoffs, oh man, we had a playoff game before we got to the playoff to get past, a worthy opponent being Bethel High School. And, you had their greats, the Gale brothers, Sean and Jimmy Gale, Walter Bailey, Tim Royal. It goes on and on. So, we didn't start focusing on, guys like DJ, who was DJ was a monster in high school. The whole week leading up into that game, it was to stop DJ Dozier. If we can stop DJ Dozier, we win that game. So DJ had a target on his back. But getting back to your initial question, man, I was just fortunate enough to be a part of, again, a legendary program with a legendary coach and a bunch of guys playing their heart out to represent their community.
And DJ, going over to you, man, tell us about that, because I remember you in high school, because you were like the Walter Payton in my eyes in the state. And watching y'all play against Hampton was like, I'm watching greatness. I'm like just your rugged style of running and toughness. And tell us a little bit about playing on that side of the water, looking at, okay, what are they doing on the peninsula, or just focusing in on the Beach District?
Yeah, of course. Now the Beach was very competitive, especially back then with First Colonial being one of our top rivals. But at the end of the day, everybody knew that, as Robert was saying, the playoffs or the state championship really depended on whether you could beat Hampton or not. And so getting through the Beach District was tough, but really the matchup was against Hampton. I mean, back then Hampton was, they were a phenomenal group of individuals that knew how to play together. A lot of great athletes, but not just athletes, but again, they had a system that was just a machine. And I remember, and Robert's being a little humble here. I mean, look, he was the monster. And when we went up against those, I remember my senior year. I'll skip up to my senior year. So my senior year, a lot of our guys were young, and I remember even from the coin toss, I went back to the team, and guys' eyes were already glossy. I mean, they were already intimidated, because all week they had seen the big man, just killing folk, and they weren't ready for it, but it was a tremendous time back then. We had some great coaches, and I think it's just really fortunate, especially going back to my junior year. We had one of the best teams on the East Coast as far as we knew. I mean, we actually had guys that were playing that were not playing on both sides. We almost had a two platoon team, offense and defense. And when I look back at that team, a lot of those guys end up going getting scholarships, college scholarships, and going on to do great things in college and beyond. But unfortunately, that team didn't get a chance to play against Hampton because we ended up tying First Colonial, and so both teams ended up going 9-0-1, and so First Colonial. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was no playoff to determine which team was going to go to the playoffs and play Hampton, right? They had to flip a coin.
Yeah,
a coin. Yeah,
Flip the coin, and First Colonial ended up winning the coin toss and went against Hampton, of course, lost, and Hampton went on to win the championship once again. But like I said, we had some great teams, we had some great players, but at the end of the day, it was always about who was going to beat Hampton, because that was the only team you need to beat to end up in the state championship in order to win.
That's good stuff. Hey, yeah. Langy, man. Hey, Langy, it's funny, man.
I'm loving this.
I know. Hey, Langy, but I'm thinking about you. I think you got a fascinating story, Langy, because when I first approached you, I never forget it. I've heard about you, obviously, from TV. And then when I found out you were living in Michael Woods, I said, wait a minute. Me and the boy said, man, I think he live over in this house over here.
Yeah.
And so we used to drive by like, man, let's see if he over there now. It's off season.
Yeah, man. I lived over there. I lived in Hampton probably 15 years. And then I bought that condo over there when I was probably my third or fourth year in the league. I lived with my grandmother 4 years in the league when I came home in the off season. That seems to be my safe place to get away from all of it. But I'm really enjoying DJ and Banks, who I had a chance to play with 3 or 4 years here in Cleveland. So we go way back.
Hey, but Langy, tell us about high school, because I think you got a fascinating story that I remember when I first met you, and we kind of vibed a little bit. You told me about your high school experience a little bit, going into, college, Elizabeth City.
Well, being from Smithfield, which is the other side of the bridge, and I know all the streets and the cities. I went to school with my boys from Booker T, and I know Lance, my buddies that went to school in Northview, James Holman, all those guys who are a little bit older than DJ. And then you got my friend, my JV basketball coach lived off Powhatan Parkway. So I knew all these guys when I was playing ball, my first few years in the league. But for me in high school, there was no little league. My first time I took and put on a pair of cleats, I was 13 trying out for the JV football team. And that's where it was in my community back then, that there was a little league football team, but it was pretty much run by Isla White Academy, which we weren't allowed to play. So, for us, it was the first time we got a chance to play was 8th grade. And it had some nice coaches that taught us good mechanics and how to do it, but pretty much you were on your own. You played backyard football, just like these guys did. Guys from one neighborhood that got together with another neighborhood. I'm the only guy from my area to play in the pros. I mean, it was called the old Peanut District. Forest Glen, John Yates, Suffolk High School, Wake. Those were the schools that we played against, and most of the schools from my area weren't in the same district. And I don't know the staggering of the districts. I know that Hampton, Booker T, Northview, and all the schools out at the beach were a grade higher than us. They had more ball players. They had much more talent. We had a small town with maybe 50, 60 guys that would come out for the ball club. So we played, I think it was called Division II back then. And I think those guys maybe won Division I as far as the ranking in high school. But for me, I just went out and played, man. I had a cousin that was 4 years older than me. And his name is Harold Denson. And he played at John Yates. He's legendary at John Yates. And every summer I would leave my home in Smithfield and go to Suffolk with him to Hobson. And I played with all his buddies. So every summer I came back home, I was playing better than my buddies at home because my game kept getting better. I didn't play with my friends. They weren't better than me. I played with my cousin who was 3 years older. I had to up my game, so I got better as time went on. And, you know, I got a chance to go to school. I had scholarships to all the, you know, to the CIAA schools, no Division I schools. I think maybe Wichita State, who had a football team back then. And Joe Buggs, who was my high school coach, took me down to Elizabeth City. Yeah, everybody knows Coach Buggs. Yeah. He's off Shell Road too. So I know Banks have heard of him too.
Absolutely.
And he took me down there because I was going to military. And Coach said, come down here with me and watch a basketball game, see if you like it. Well, you know, I'm from a little town, man. I went with the same girls from 1st grade to 12th grade. I got down there and saw girls from New York, Philadelphia, DC. I'm like, man, I'm going to college.
Hey, every recruiting trip, that's how they.
Yeah. And then that was it. I got there, and before I realized it, I was playing as a freshman. I became a starter as a sophomore, and then the USFL became big. And when the USFL started scouting these two guys, Dwight Till and Bobby Futrell, for the USFL, these scouts, and then the NFL started getting more interested in some of the smaller schools. And before I realized it, they were watching me because I was playing against my guys in practice. And guy shows up and says, hey, man, you might have a chance to play in the league. Because I was in ROTC. I had done 3 years in ROTC. So I had no idea that what it took to play in the NFL. You know, I had never gone to a professional game. I had never been on a professional stadium. I had never met a professional player until I walked into Cleveland, until I played my first Monday night game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I didn't know anything about this stuff. I was just playing ball. You know, you just throw the ball out there, you just go get it. I mean, you run fast, you jump high, catch rock. I mean, that's what it was to me. And then I got up here and I say, oh, you got to think too. And it was a whole nother world. And I feel like I could fit in. You know, I got a few years in the league and it worked out just fine. But I'm still a kid, still growing, still learning as I do. And I'm 57 years old now. It's been a blessing.
Yeah. Vernon, did you have anything?
So there was a question that came in from Facebook. A couple of Rodney Howard played at Bethel. He said, what's up, fellas? But there's a Charles Spiker who asked, what advice do you have for a high school football player? I mean, I know that things have changed a lot. The way recruiting happens now, I think the idea of maybe do you play multiple sports? Is it one sport? I think all of you may have kids you're mentoring, you know, young men, young women in sports, but particularly for high school football, what advice do each of you give now? I mean, is it, hey, focus on these 2 things or 3 things? How do you what are your philosophies now?
DJ, you're a 2-way guy.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I've always believed that to be as versatile as possible, it works to your advantage. I know there's a lot of philosophy, a lot of ideas out there that have kids or almost forcing them to focus on one sport. And that's fine. I mean, because, you know, repetition does mean something. But at the same time, you know, I think versatility, it adds quite a bit of athleticism to an individual. And at the end of the day, you know, when you're looking at a college or college recruit, or even when the NFL is looking at a college player, they want to know how athletic they are. And so I think being involved in different sports allows you to do that, and that works to a person's advantage. So I think that, you know, an athlete should not feel obligated or concerned about playing more than one sport these days. And again, I know it's scrutinized, but it works to your advantage.
Yeah, I totally agree with DJ as well. But it seems now it's so hard for a kid to play multiple sports, because now, you know, football is year round, basketball year round, all the sports now year round. And I don't agree with kids being discouraged from playing multiple sports. You know, all the things that DJ just alluded to, you know, I totally agree. You know, as you mentioned, Vern, when we started off, you know, I transferred from Peninsula Catholic to Hampton High in the 10th grade. So from Little League football, once I stopped playing Little League football, I didn't play football again until the 10th grade. But basketball, you know, You know, you had to move your feet to play defense on basketball, you know, quickness, conditioning. So all of those things that I developed playing basketball, and, you know, you grew up off Shell Road, you shooting basketball 24/7, you know, doing school.
Right.
You know, that's what you do. You know, but for me, it was the Thompson courts, right? You will shoot hoops, but the skill sets and the conditioning that I developed in basketball carried over for me in football. You know, I was never a fast guy, but, you know, hey, I ran my 4.8 from the kickoff to the end of the game because that conditioning. And again, you know, I had good feet. You know, I was a tall guy, big guy, but I had good feet, you know, which helped me, you know, offensive line and defensive line and linebacker. So, you know, yeah, and you know, if you got a chance to play multiple sports, do it, fight for it. You know, don't let coaches or programs talk you out of it. And you know, a good coach, he's not going to discourage you. That's just my opinion.
And I'm on the same page with the guys. I'd like to see guys play more than one sport. One bleeds into the other. Hand-eye coordination, footwork, all that stuff is the same, and all the sports use the same kind of sound and technique. So yeah, I'm all for it. You know, and sometimes you have to realize that as a kid goes from 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade, he usually funnels himself to what he likes best. He's going to be better at football or better at basketball, or maybe he just wants to do all the sports in the beginning. And then, but you know, you got to sage your academics. I mean, you got to make sure that the academics are in order before we start worrying about all of the sports. I mean, yeah, I wanted to play everything, but my mom and dad made sure that you don't get these books, you don't play nothing. And I think that's what needs to be taken care of first. If my son can handle 3 sports and get good grades, I'm all for it, but he's got to handle that first.
Well, and back on that, you know, that recruiting piece, which I think is so different, what is very different than what it is today. Rob, I want you to go through it because I know we know Langy's journey, which you just explained, but I think you guys had a little unique journey yourself. And you know, Banks, I'm just saying, Banks, you were #1 player in the country. And look, on the last one, we had Terry Kirby talking about he took private jets after basketball games. I'm like, okay. And that was back in what, the 80s? That was the late 80s. Like,
and we took a trailway from Elizabeth City down to Florida. That's how we got there to 16 hours on a bus.
Well,
journey, man.
Hey, man, I tell you what, it was crazy.
That's what I want to hear.
Overwhelming. And I'm sure DJ had a similar experience because, again, he was one of the top running backs in the country. Certainly one of the top running backs coming out of Virginia. But man, you know, back then, what was it? 5 visits?
Yeah.
And, you know, I realized that I was being heavily recruited. I believe it was going into coming out of my junior year, right before senior year. You know, growing up in the ACC, you know, those ACC schools start showing up to practices and to games, you know, early. It was a guy from University of North Carolina who was always on the sidelines. I mean, I think starting my 11th grade year, this guy was always on the sidelines. So, and again, growing up in the ACC, you paying attention to what North Carolina State, you know, Virginia Tech, Clemson. You know, Clemson was a big dog back then with Danny Ford. Matter of fact, I think Danny Ford attended our game, DJ, that we had over in the Beach District my senior year. I think Danny had flew in for that game to watch one of us, right? But in any case, you know, when I got a letter, Coach Smith handed me a letter. You know, crazy. My locker was right across from Coach Smith's office, right? All 3 years, my locker was right across from his locker. So he hands me some letter. I'm getting all this mail and stuff every day, just ton of mail. And I look at it, and it says USC, right? And I'm, you know, I ain't think much of it. I threw it up in the locker and ran to class. But I'm sitting in class, and I'm going, USC, what does that stand for? I'm trying to figure it out, right? Then it hit me, bang. I said, University of Southern California, right? So I run back to my locker after the bell rung, and I look and I open it up, and I realized at that point how heavily I was being recruited. Again, back then, you know, with the NCAA controlling who played on TV, all you saw was USC, Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State. Not like today with cable TV, everybody on TV, and the schools control their own viewership or when they're on TV. But it hit me then how heavily I was being recruited. And it got so crazy, man, that, the phone at the house, was ringing off the hook. My best friend, Craig Green, lived across, Craig and I, we've been knowing each other before we started school, right? And we still friends to this day. They got his telephone number, right? Girls that I was dating, they got their telephone number. And you're a 17-year-old kid, right? And you got these adults coming at you. I didn't know who to believe, who was being honest, who had my best interest at heart, because everybody in your ear telling you different things. I finally got to the point and I narrowed it down, and it's crazy how I narrowed it down. Okay. I said, all right, I'm gonna go visit a West Coast team. And at the time, USC went on probation for, coaches having, giving classes in garages or something. USC was under scrutiny by the NCAA. So my mom right away was like, nah, you ain't going there. They ain't doing it right. You ain't going there. I said, okay, I'm gonna go visit UCLA. So I chose UCLA, Ohio State, because one Ron Springs, who came out of Lafayette, right? And Skeeter Palmer, right? He was there, but Ohio State and Woody Hayes, right? I'm gonna go visit Ohio State. So it was UCLA, Ohio State, University of North Carolina, because they were the first ones to show up on the practice field. I went up to Virginia Tech, and who else did I go visit? And Notre Dame, right? I had a unofficial trip to UVA, right? But again, what was crazy about it, man, I'll give you the clean story I can share with you today, okay? I go out to UCLA. Donahue is the head coach, all right? I get picked up from this lady. She driving a Bentley, right? We got to the UCLA campus, beautiful campus, okay? I'm having lunch with Mayor Bradley, the mayor of Los Angeles at the time.
Wow.
Okay. I got, who else did I see? Mr. T, had lunch with him. I mean, they bringing out all the heavyweights, right? This lady who picks me up in this Bentley, this white Bentley, we go have lunch somewhere. They got flamingos walking around, while we having lunch. And again, I'm a kid from small town Hampton, and I'm sitting here with the mayor of Los Angeles telling me that if I come out to UCLA, he'll take a special interest in me. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. What does a special interest mean? Okay. So I leave there. The next week I go to Ohio State. Okay. Earl Bruce is the head coach at the time. I spend my time with Woody Hayes the whole time I'm on Ohio State. I'm hanging with Woody Hayes. The gentleman that owns Wendy's, Mr. Weinstead, I think that's his name, right? I go out to his home. At the time, his daughter Wendy was attending Ohio State. He's telling me, Robert, you come to Ohio State, I'm gonna take care of you. I go out to Galbraith Farms. Anybody know anything about the state of Ohio? Galbraith Farms. Mr. Galbraith is a real estate developer. And I go to his ranch. He's got thoroughbred horse racing going. He's breeding thoroughbred horses. He got buffaloes. I had a camera on me, man. I put the camera down because I said, ain't nobody can believe this. This kind of wealth. I'm a small town guy from Hampton. I'm from Shell Road. Ain't nobody gonna believe this. Okay. It was just crazy, man. And my mom convinced me to go visit Notre Dame. I turned Notre Dame down 3 times on visits. One, I ain't like the uniforms. I ain't know where the hell Notre Dame was. When they told me South Bend, I'm like, where the hell is that? Right? I looked at the record. I'm like, oh no, right? I turned them down 3 times. My mom finally said, go visit them. I flew into Chicago, had to take a little small plane from Chicago to South Bend. It was the windiest day of the year. This little plane bouncing around the skies, right? I'm sick as hell by the time I get to South Bend, right? I get off the plane, it's cold. It's cold like I ain't never felt cold before. And, it get cold on the Chesapeake, right? Okay, so I go to Notre Dame. I met with Jim Johnson, the defensive coordinator. who later became the defensive coordinator with the Philadelphia Eagles. I wasn't sold on Jerry Fowles. I mean, I love Jerry Fowles. Jerry Fowles is a good man, right? You won't meet a better man. But I was not sold on Jerry Fowles as a coach, right? And you got to, I'm coming from a legendary high school coach, so I know what it's supposed to look like, okay? So I wasn't sold on him. I sit down with Jim Johnson. We talk football. I said, okay, this guy, this is the real deal here. I can do this. But what sold me was this. My host at Notre Dame was Alan Pinkett and Eric Dorsey. Yeah. Both of those guys up in Northern Virginia, right? So we about to hit the campus, and they booed up. Both of them got girlfriends. I said, nah, I got to shake these two guys. I got to get out on this campus and see what's really going on. So I lost them, but I'm walking across campus, and Friday night, Saturday night on Notre Dame campus back then, all out party, right? Notre Dame was an all boys school until about 1972. So all male dorms had bars in the basement of every male dorm. DJ, you visited Notre Dame, right?
Oh yeah.
But you might be able to attest to this, right? So Friday night, it's all out party. So all you see is groups of kids just going across campus, the parties, keg party, good time, right? So I lost my host because I wanted to get out on campus. A guy came by and looked at me. He said, hey, he said, aren't you Robert Banks? I was like, yeah. He said, you here on a recruiting trip this weekend? I said, yes. He said, come on with us, right? So they just picked me up. They ain't know me from Adam, but I'm hanging, and I saw how the football players and the student body got along, right? Mm-hmm. That community, right? And matter of fact, the guy who said, hey, come on, roll with us was Mike Golick. Mike Golick was, I didn't know that was, Mike at the time, but it was Mike Golick. He was like, hey, come on, come on, roll with us, right? And it came down to this, and it was some more craziness that I can't share with you guys.
And when we all hanging back in the 7-5,
yeah. Now this is a kid where it got so crazy in Hampton, man, I could do no wrong. I got stopped in Hampton one time speeding, and the officer looked at Robert Benton, gave me my ticket and said, have a good day. I mean, it got so crazy in Hampton that I was sporting a 2-door red Mercedes, okay? 2-door red Mercedes. I live off Shell Road, man. But this dealer, hey, he was a UVA alum, right? Hey, you drive this, okay? It got so crazy to that whole recruiting time, man. When I sit down with Notre Dame and they told me two things. They said, hey, look, we're gonna give you an opportunity to play top-notch football and get a world-class education. And it was so simple and believable. I trusted them. Everybody else, I didn't know what to believe. Mm-hmm. So my decision came down to that simple promise that they gave me. And I wanted to see the world too. By them being independent, we playing all over the country. So my whole deal too, I wanted to see the world. And once you start, going on these recruiting trips and traveling, small town kid, hey, the furthest I had been as a kid was up to Maryland to stay with my aunt, during the summertime, or in Williamsburg, to hang out with my grandparents and cousins. So now I get to go to this college that has a good academic reputation, that played top-notch football, independent. So we playing, all the top schools in the country, and a chance to travel and see the world. And what they said to me was, hey, we'll give you a chance to play top-notch football and get a world-class education. I said, okay, that's where I'm going. And that's what made my decision, man.
That's awesome.
And just to put this in context before DJ, for the younger kids that are watching, there was no internet. There were no cell phones. You had maybe, newspapers, like for all of that to happen, for them to find you, I mean, in the context of all that, and we said this last week, with the other crews, like there was no internet, there was no Twitter and posting, self-promotion and stuff like that. So for those kind of things that happen, I just want to make sure that the young folks out there watching understand it was a different time.
As a testament to Langhorne, if you got talent, even back then, even before this age of the internet, they go find you. If you put in the work and the dedication and you got the talent, they go find you.
Yep, he's absolutely right. People started showing up, but you got to show out when it's time.
I like
That's
it.
how, I mean, I wish I'd have gone to one of them big schools one time. That sounds so exciting.
I look, just give it a recruiting visit.
Yeah, I just want to go on a recruiting trip.
But that glitter drive you crazy, Langhorne. That glitter, man. You can get got with that glitter.
DJ, talk
That's
to us,
true.
DJ. How was your day? You played for the legend, Joe Pa.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, the process, as Robert says, was crazy. I mean, at minimum, right? I mean, I was fortunate. My dad was smart enough back then to sort of work as he was a screening. He put every call through a screening process, and it really got to a point where he actually took all the calls and just allowed me to focus on schoolwork and the things of just being a high school kid. But it's funny hearing Robert's story is tremendous. I mean, that's the first time I've heard the details of what he went through, and it's funny how some of it is very similar to what I went through. I mean, the first time I got that letter from USC, I had the same reaction. I couldn't believe it. Like, are you serious? USC, kind of reaction. So when I started picking my schools to visit, I was definitely going to North Carolina. The reason I was going to North Carolina is because it was my favorite school growing up, even pre Michael Jordan. I mean, I love that school. My family loved Carolina basketball, and so I was definitely going to visit Carolina, even though back then the football team was not necessarily top tier. I mean, they were good, but they weren't top five. I was going to Virginia Tech because my high school coach said, look, Virginia Tech's recruiting you from the beginning. It's a state school. You need to at least go to one state school. And I wasn't going to go to UVA, so I ended up going to Tech. And then the other three schools, I ended up going to Georgia because I was a big time Herschel Walker fan. And so that was an interesting trip. I mean, that was crazy back then. I was going to
You got something to say.
I'll put it this way. When I left, I didn't say goodbye to anybody. I just left. I saw the guy that was picking me up. And back, I'm assuming it's the same way now, but the airport was an hour away, Atlanta airport. So, you had to get somebody to drive you there. And so I saw him in the cafeteria. I said, hey, you ready to go? Yeah, let's go. I didn't say goodbye to anybody, not a coach, and not anybody else. So, the folks at Georgia knew I probably knew I wasn't coming back. And, but that was, I won't go into details as everything that happened there. But, and then the other school, of course, I ended up choosing to visit Penn State. But before I chose Penn State, it really came down to Notre Dame, UCLA, Nebraska, and Alabama. I didn't think Alabama was really recruiting me that hard, but I at least wanted to put them in my last two potential visits. And at the time, so I X'd out UCLA just because it was too far. I knew I wasn't going to go there. So it came down to Nebraska, Notre Dame, and Penn State for my last two visits. And so I chose Notre Dame. And then it came down to Penn State, Nebraska. When I chose Penn State, my dad ended up getting a phone call from University of Nebraska. Again, we're talking about how crazy it is. So he gets a call, and it's get what coach it was. But the coach basically told my dad, said, "Hey, Dozier's making a mistake by not coming to Nebraska." And my dad said, "Well, I'll pass that message on to him." And that was the end of that. But what was amazing in my visits when I got to Penn State, it was just different. The light has to come on for different people in different situations. And for me, the light came on when I got to Penn State. It was really, meeting Paterno was certainly an honor, but the university they took it a little different in terms of recruiting. They took a different approach. And instead of me just hanging out with the guys and going to meet girls, which is part of it, it was about academics. I met with the dean of the business school. I was impressed with that. I met with some of the other academic folks, very impressed with that. When I remember walking through the locker room and I saw Kenny Jackson and Mark Robinson, who were juniors at the time. They were sitting on a training table reading the Wall Street Journal. Like, what? And I asked somebody else, I said, are these guys doing that for real? Or are they just that for show? Oh, no, these guys are financiers in the making. Serious? And, what's funny is when you look back in history, back then, the CEO for Merrill Lynch was a Penn State grad. And so there are a lot of guys, a lot of classmates or students, not athletes, but students that ended up going into financial planning and becoming stockbrokers, but all working for Merrill Lynch, Goldman Sachs, and some of the other big houses out there. Even to this day, Penn State alumni are all over when it comes to New York and the exchange and some of the other financial institutions. But I was impressed seeing those guys checking out the Wall Street Journal because it was a clear sign that academics was real. And of course, my parents were excited about that part of it. In terms of specifics, I'm sure Banks and all the other folks. We got offered things that were, we don't necessarily need to talk about, but people, you got offered some things, free things. My dad got a few things offered to him. One university, offered him the company he was working for an extra contract, because my dad was a partner in a electrical service company. And so when I didn't choose that school, they had called him and said, hey, any way you can get your son to change his mind. He said, listen, my son's mind's made up, but I'd like to talk more about them contracts. And that wasn't on the table.
No, but hey, man, thank you, man, for that. That's really big because sure,
great stories,
man. They are great stories, and sort of transitioning into the league where you guys really, displayed this camaraderie of being from with 757 now. We know at 804. That's what we know as all of us. But for purposes of this conversation, 757. How was there a feeling amongst all of you in the league at that time? Like, because I know Vernon and myself and others, we kept up with you guys, and we watched you guys on television. Like, hey man, did you see Langhorne, play against, such and such last night? Man, you all see Robert Banks? Oh, you see what DJ did to such and such to the Packers? Like, did y'all have this personal feeling of pride playing in the National Football League, being from home, being from Smithfield, Hampton, Virginia Beach? Like, did y'all have this self-pride? And then when you played against each other, you said, oh, that's the homeboy right there. That's right. Langhorne, that's Banks, or whatever the case may be, the Sean Gale. Like, did y'all have that sense of camaraderie being from the 757?
Well, for me, it was a big deal because I remember playing against Easley as a rookie. And one of the things you would do when you first start, when you get in the league, you look down the list to see where they're from. And me being from Smithfield, I didn't know all the guys from the beach and from Norfolk and Williamsburg, but I knew who he was. And I made it a point to go over to him and told him where I was from, and he gave me a little bit of respect. But LT knew who I was. When I played Lawrence Taylor in New York, he said, hey, little homeboy, how you doing? He said, stay out of my way. Exactly. Because we used to run some crackback blocks, and he wasn't fond of that. So he said, homeboy, you stay out of my way. And, my deal mainly with the guys from the area was Bruce Smith was drafted number 1 in 1985. I was drafted number 175 in 1985. Bruce and I met when we were 18. His best friends from high school were my roommates in college. Bruce came down to Elizabeth City. We met, and through the years, we became friends as sophomores, as juniors, and as seniors. Bruce goes to Buffalo, I go to Cleveland. We played them in scrimmages. You know, Bruce and I still buzz. Bruce was up here this year twice. He comes to Cleveland, we hang out. So that that friendship has been a great thing for a long time. But over the years, there's always been young guys from the CIAA, from the Virginia Beach, Norfolk area, that I never let them get away. Even Michael Vick, when he came through, when he was with Pittsburgh, he wasn't even dressed for the team, but you want to make sure you go say, hey, I'm a homeboy from Virginia. And everybody seems to have a little respect. I just think we're not as known as some of the other places. I want to say Texas and Florida, but we got more ball players per capita. And I mean nasty ball players from our little area. That's quite impressive.
What do you think, Robert?
Yeah, absolutely. It was always huge, representing the 757, as you mentioned, the 804 back in the day. We had a lot of guys come before us, as I mentioned, Ron Springs and, the big dog LT, if you play defense, I can recall, when LT came into his own, man, everybody running around. LT, we had Ron Springs, we had Dwight Stevenson came out of Hampton High School, with the Miami Dolphins and the Easley. So, being in the league, I remember Monday night, I was in Cleveland. We were playing a Monday night game against the Chicago Bears, and Sean Gale was still with Chicago. And, growing up in Hampton, Sean was a little ahead of me, but I can recall those Hampton Bethel games, and them Gale brothers, those guys were studs. And after the game, Sean and I talked, and he was like, hey, man, you're making the people back in the 757 proud, right? And that was the whole thing, making sure you are out there doing your best to represent the 757. And when you're from a small town, and how our community felt about football. I mean, I can remember, when going to play state championship games, right? And Coach Smith saying, hey, when we go out here today, we represent your community. Right. And, my dad, long time, worked in the shipyard. A lot of my buddies' dads worked in the shipyard. These were hardworking people who believed in hard work to get, what they wanted out of life. They were disciplinarians. And for us, every time we hit that field, it was all about representing our community. So it doesn't stop. I remember my first game as a pro starting, that was against Pittsburgh Steelers. And Pittsburgh, I was always a huge Steeler fan. So that first game for me as a professional, as a starter, I can recall, man, having, if it's even possible, an out-of-body experience, because it took me all the way back to Shell Road, man. To finally reach that goal, they hit me like a ton of bricks. And I mean, it was emotional, because I went back to, all those times I used to run down Shell Road, all the way over to the waterfront and back up Chesterfield. That was my route, running over to Hampton High, so all that came crashing back. When I got to Cleveland, this dude in this Jeep, well, I think he had a pink top on it. I think it was Langy, right? And I said, I like this brother, because he don't give a darn, but he like pink. He gonna have pink on this Jeep. And I remember Langhorne coming to, what's up, homie? And I'm looking at him like, homie. He's like, yeah, I'm from Smithfield. I'm like, what? And right then, that was he. Langy welcomed me, to Cleveland. Now he offense, a lot of times offensive guys don't hang out with defense. And me and Langy, it stays that way, but just to have a homeboy there, and he came up to me and said, what's up, homeboy? So absolutely. I mean, when I look at guys now, Michael Vick, Ronald Carey, Tyrod Taylor, guys from Williamsburg all the way back to the Beach District. If I'm sitting there watching the game with my family, some of my friends and neighbors here, I call them out. Yeah, he from the 757. Let me tell you about the 757. I'm proud of him, man. So absolutely. It was all about making the hometown proud.
I don't want to cut DJ off yet, but I work as a uniform inspector for the league now. So I'm on the sideline every game. There's two types of people I look for before I do my inspection. One, who's from home, and two, who's Q Sci-Fi. And I go every game. I go, "What's up, team?"
I like that.
What's up, DJ? What about you?
Oh, listen, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of pride coming from 757/804. I mean, I grew up just like these guys. When first time I saw Kenny Easley playing at UCLA, that I can remember at least, and the impact that guy had on the game was absolutely incredible. He was one of the first, or maybe the first, players that was touted as a potential Heisman winner, and he went out there and took care of business. And so the fact that he was from 757, I think for me, helped to produce that idea that, man, I need to watch everybody from this town. And I remember even when my father and I would go to high school games when I was a young guy, especially when Kempsfield was playing Lake Taylor. Lake Taylor had Amos Lawrence, famous.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
I mean, famous Amos he was bad.
Yeah.
I mean, gaining 300, 400 yards in a game, and that's not exaggeration, right?
That's right.
And so him going to Carolina, and then getting linked up and learning more about LT, and him being from the Williamsburg area, you just naturally start growing with that mindset that again, I'm not thinking, hey, one day I'm gonna be one of those guys, but the pride begins to grow, I think, at least for me as a young person. And so by the time I got to high school and beyond, absolutely, you start watching guys. Matter of fact, for me, I was curious to see who was from Virginia, but certainly more so who was from 757/804. With Robert and I got a chance to play even against each other at the college ranks, because he was at Notre Dame, I was at Penn State. We played all 4 years against each other. But when I got a chance to meet Alan Pickett, and learn his roots from Virginia, and other guys even from Penn State. I mean, it's a natural, or at least for me, it was a natural progression of pride. And what was interesting is, after I retired, I remember I used to be involved in the Ashburn Youth Football League camps every year, every summer. And when these kids found out that I was from 757, it was an interesting story. They're like, "Oh man, you from 757?" So once again, it brought that pride out, and because these are kids from Northern Virginia, 703, and I'm thinking, man, this is amazing how, because back then I don't know how these guys felt. I used to fire some of the guys coming out of Vienna, Virginia, and some of the other Northern Virginia schools, but the fact that these kids are admiring, athletes from 757 was amazing. That was a amazing experience for me.
Vernon, you want to go to see if we have any questions from?
Well, we do got somebody's checking in. Kermit Buggs said, "Great to see you guys." There's a great connection between Cheryl Smithville, Penn State. So Kermit Buggs is checking in.
Do you know who Buggs is?
I think that's
Kermit Buggs is the son of Joe Buggs,
Mm-hmm.
who was my high school football coach, Elizabeth City State Hall of Famer, played for the Pittsburgh, and then his son Kermit now is, I can't remember where he just got another job, but he just became the head coach somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's good stuff.
yeah, so
he's kind of Penn State.
So he was checking in.
Go to you, of course.
Hey,
Go ahead.
One of the things that when Carl and I have been doing the camp, which you guys helped us inspire to do, to bring you guys back to the camp. We always have this chat session, like an hour after all the on the field stuff, and often we'll ask the players to maybe share something, maybe something around adversity and how you sort of overcame that. Was it something like, I can only imagine, being in the league and some of the pressure, playing professional ball. Was there ever a moment where you're like sort of questioning yourself and you had to overcome that? And like, how'd you work through that? And this is much about whether in the league or in any profession, but we wanted to be able to share that with, a lot of the kids and adults. To be honest, we're all facing different challenges. We're going through a huge one right now, but was it a moment or were you in the league? I don't know if it was an injury, learn the playbook. I don't know. Did you, maybe each of you could share in terms of how you dealt with an adverse situation?
Well, Vern, for me, and Langy mentioned this in the beginning, that we're all still growing, maturing, and finding our way, even at, 50, 54 years of age. But attitude is so important in handling adversity. When I initially got to Notre Dame as a freshman, and I was a very disgruntled freshman. Thought I should have been playing a lot early. Played a lot of special teams, as well as I think I started one game my freshman year, but and again I became very, very disgruntled to the point where I was looking to transfer. We got home after the Liberty Bowl. And, I told my mom, who was a big influence on, which school I chose, that, hey, I listened to you, the first go around. I said, I'm out. Because, again, coming from a program, my whole time at Hampton High School, we lost one football game, 2 state titles. So, and then, you ended up 7-4, 7-5, some 6-5, whatever. I'm like, it ain't right. Something wrong here. I ain't playing. So, why not? We not winning. So what's up? So, but I got a call from a new coach who was coming in, Bishop Harris. And Coach Bish had recruited me when he was at LSU and actually came down and saw me playing a state game against George Washington Danville, which was a big dog up in Northern Virginia back then. And he said, come on back, we go get it right. Come on back, we go get it right. Now, I had to accept the fact that, that I do all that I could do to be a starter. In that year, that was the only time I came back. I went back home that one summer, and I went back to doing the things that got me to where I had gotten as a high school player. I recommitted, I refocused, and I changed my attitude about the whole situation and went back, and the rest was history. Ended up a starter the next 3 years, led the team in tackles, had a great, collegiate career, except for the 3 losses I endured from Penn State. So, but it was all attitude. When Lou Holtz came in my senior year, I switched positions my senior year. So I lined up and played defensive tackle at 235 pounds. Okay. And I made that change between spring ball in the first game, which was against Michigan, and went up against a big All-American Jimbo Elliott. And we did battle. Right. And I know we did battle because he came and found me after the game and told me, I was a hell of a ball player. So we did battle. Right. I'm not going to sit up here and say I kicked his butt every snap, but he and I, we did battle. Right. So it was attitude when I was asked to change positions, so we could be a better team. Lou Holtz's first year there. And then, draft, I fell to the 7th round. So I entered the NFL at 240 pounds with 1 year of experience in college playing defensive lineman. All right. The Oilers, I injured my hand. They stuck me on IR for a year to hide me. But that year was for me to develop into a professional defensive lineman. And anybody, Reggie Langhorne, DJ Dozier, they can tell you, NFL ain't somewhere you go and develop, right? You got to get it done. Because every day you walk out on that field, you competing, and it's about the business, and it's a numbers game. Okay, so again, I had to meet that adversity, going from high school to college, position my senior year. Don't make it in the pros.
You're breaking up.
Yeah, Robert, you're breaking up.
Yep.
Robert, you still with us? Oh, he froze up.
Yeah, his screen is froze.
Yeah. Until he come back, DJ, why don't you give us a little bit until Robert comes back?
But of course, he's on the right line. Adversity is par for the course. In life, and certainly in athletics, and in big time athletics at the college level and the pro level. Adversity, you're gonna face it as a team. You're gonna face it as an individual. It's gonna happen. So the question is, how do you handle it? And what Robert's saying about attitude is certainly a big part of that. What's your approach? What's your strategy when it comes? When it shows up, when those obstacles are in your face, and you got to face them. Regardless of how young you are, how experienced you are or not, it happens. And certainly in my case, I had some adverse situations at Penn State. You want to let Robert finish, or
you go ahead and finish up your sentence, and then we'll let Robert finish up.
So at Penn State, we definitely went through some things as a team. I went through some things as an individual. Injuries, a big part of that. That's one of the areas where I had to fight in my career, through high school, college, and the pros. Injuries and dealing with the way my body was reacting or not reacting the way I wanted it to. And so, anytime you deal with injury, which you can't control, it gets you got to deal with that frustration of rehabbing or doing whatever it is you need to do to get back on the field, and having that feeling where you feel like you're letting the team down, letting yourself down. So you have to take that approach that no matter what adversity comes, you're going to overcome. Again, what Robert said, that attitude, you're going to have the attitude to get you through it, because without the right attitude, you don't get on the other side of that adversity. That's the whole point. The point is not to face adversity and get knocked down or pushed down or run over, but to run over it and to overcome it. And definitely when I got to the pros, adversity is there. I didn't have the career that I was hoping to have at that level. And some of it was injury, some of it was circumstance, some of it was just plain old business. But what was funny is back in, I think it was 88, which would have been my second season. I'm sorry, going to my third season. We were sitting in a meeting, and our running back coach, John Bruder, says to us, he said, "Hey guys, listen, there's a rumor going around that Herschel Walker is coming to Minnesota." Not true. We're completely happy with who we got. And so, if you hear that from here on out, just dismiss it. It's not going to happen. And so the next day, Herschel's sitting right next to me. And Herschel was my boy, because he was my recruiting, my host when I went down to Georgia, and I had met him at some other events. So, it was good to see him. But you got to deal with adversity, especially at the highest level, because like Robert said, hey, it's a business, and you're not in control. No matter how good you are, at some point, you got to give. Even if you become a starter and a superstar, at some point you got to give it up. And even that's part of the adversity you deal with, because mentally you got to deal with, being at a certain level. And then at that point, so we've spent all this time as young people, as youngsters and high schoolers and college age, and then you get to the pros, and this is your last dance, whether it lasts for a day or thousands of days. It's your last dance. And so you got to deal with that adversity too, of retiring and then figuring out what you do with your life after that.
Rob, we're going to let you, I know you were trying to finish up a point, Rob, and I want to let you get your opportunity because you wanted some good stuff.
Yeah, again, it's all about attitude, because, when things are going well, it's not hard to have, or show good character But when things get difficult, adversity will take place at some point in time. It will hit. So you have to make your mind up to decide on what attitude, because attitude is a choice, and what character will you display. Because if it's not positive, it's going to be an uphill battle. And, I try to, for these young kids that I talk to today, I tell them, hey, try to look at the bright side of any situation, because, when you get, if you face it with the right attitude, you show good charactership, you're going to come out of it stronger than what you went into it. So, for all young people, just keep that in mind. Your attitude, that's a choice. We get to choose what attitude we roll with.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm on point with Robert and DJ. They're saying exactly the things I'm thinking, and I'm sitting here saying to myself, I'll always hit the fear of failure, and that's just my inside thing, not the failure what someone may think of me, but the idea that I'm not doing the best that I can do. And then, when I was a teenager, I wanted to be older. When I was in my 20s, I wanted to be in my 30s. When I was in my 30s, I wanted to retire. Always life seemed to be wanting more than living in the present moment, absorbing what life had to offer me at that moment, paying attention to the smart people in my life. And I don't mean people maybe with great book sense. I'm just talking about the guy that gives you that nugget of knowledge that you don't pay attention to, that goes by, and then you live 5-6 more years later, you go, that's what he was talking about. I missed that too. I know more at 57 than I did at 47, 37, 27. And I try to give that to my kids. And I hope they absorb as much as they can from me. And I hope I can keep absorbing, keep growing, keep living. I missed a lot of pitches in my life. But yet I keep strolling and keep doing what it takes to survive in this world. I'm very fortunate. I went to a dark path after retiring from the league, and the whole idea of being not having a plan. So if I'm going to tell young kids, have a plan and then have a plan B. Stick with it, work with it, keep driving, pushing yourself forward, have a foundation. A lot of us come from pretty solid homes, whether one parent or both parents. Some come from a foundation of uncles and aunts and grannies and whatever the case may be. But there's positive people in our lives that gives us that drive that when times get tight, we got to find someone to turn to. But I'm not a quitter. I don't know how to say no on myself. I'm going to survive. I've been built that way. My foundation is strong. It's not built on sand, so it won't wash away so fast. So hang in there and keep fighting. And, on the other side, when it all gets said and done, it ain't that bad. It ain't that bad. Somebody's got it worse than I got it. I can assure you that. So just hang in there and keep swinging.
And Langhorne, something's interesting about you, though, that I noticed, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but you were one of the very few people that just shut it down on your own. You were in control. Like, you had just signed with Indianapolis, and I if I can remember correctly, was having a really good season, and you just kind of say, I'm good with football, right? Or did I get the story wrong?
Oh, you got the story that's been told. Now I'm going to tell you this. There's going to be a story. I did an article with Francis Schwab. He's with Yahoo Sports, and I did another interview about 2 months ago that I come out here in Cleveland with Club 46, and they do interviews of ex-Browns players. And the story is more told about my legacy those last few years in the league and how I went to Indy and why I walked away from the game. And not all of it that has been written in the past may have the knowledge that what you'll hear from now on. Life has changed for me in the last 5 or 6 years. I see things completely different. And yeah, there was things that was causing me to make some major decisions in my life. Not all of them so truthful towards a lot of people. Now it's all out. Like I said, I got sober 6 years ago. So a lot of things that I hid and stayed away from and was afraid of and depressed on, and everything's good on the outside, but what's on the inside can eat you away and you don't even know it's doing it. So I'm free today, baby. I'm free today. So I walked away from the game after 9 years, and I led the AFC in receiving and walked away. And this guy that's doing this article said, you one of 9 people to have over 1,000 yards and retire. I said, well, hell, at least I got that.
Hey, we appreciate that, Sharon. You've been open and sharing that, because one of the things Carl and I realized, like a lot of the coaches locally, when we're doing a camp, we always ask, hey, what's going on So what do you want the guys to kind of focus on when they're engaging? And one thing is about mental health and mental wellness. And we started this leadership symposium last year, and we brought someone in to focus in on that. And the fact that, Langy, for you to be open about some of that, I mean, I know I personally appreciate it because we all, we're all grown men in different areas, but it's still some things I think we're all dealing with, and particularly, teenagers and some of the youth now. It's just a lot of things that they're dealing with. So I know I definitely appreciate you being open and sharing that.
Some people say our secrets will kill us.
Yeah. Oh man, that's some good message. Look, I just want to say, on behalf of me and Vernon, y'all, you guys know y'all my heroes. Y'all my fellas. You know what I mean? So, I got love for all of y'all. You know how we go, but I really want to say it again.
I appreciate the love, brother.
You know how it is with me, man, from way back. But I want to thank y'all, man, for coming on tonight. And this has been, starting the camp back in '94 was a dream of mine, because I never went to a camp or never had a chance to meet, NFL players. I was in middle school, high school, or whatever. So I said, when I got to the NFLPA, that's something that I want to do to give these kids an opportunity to say hello to a DJ, Robert Banks, Reggie Langhorne, and others. And I just want to thank y'all for, me on behalf of me and Vernon, for all these years, just coming back and just sharing this knowledge. And this is the platform that I want to use to touch these kids, coaches, people. So many people back in the area have so much respect for you guys. And sometimes I don't think you guys really understand that or know that. But I want to say, man, thank you for being stewards of the game and of our communities, man. And, keep doing what you're doing, man. Y'all some great guys. And thank you again for coming on, man. We really appreciate this. Really do.
Hey, Carl and Vernon, I want to give you guys the kudos that you guys deserve as well. You guys have, put together that youth foundation in Hampton. And I know for me and probably for Langhorne and DJ, it took a village, to get me where I am in life, through the good times and the bad times. The list goes on and on. So I want to give you guys a kudos that y'all deserve for putting that program together, because too many of our young men and women don't have that guidance and leadership from home. So anytime, as a community that we can provide that, we got to do it, because if we lose our kids, we've lost. So kudos to both of you.
It needs to say, Carl, I'm very proud of the both of you guys. And I had the pleasure of living in Virginia when it started. So I was there for the first 2 or 3 camps.
That's right, the first one.
I'm so proud of you guys to continue it. Great job. And, hopefully I can get down soon. We're always on the move, but God bless you guys, on a hell of a job. And it's so nice to see Coach Tomlin take the forefront to really be the staple to stick it together. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Hey guys, Carl, Vernon, I want to echo what these guys are saying. I mean, listen, I know for a fact that, without good parenting, and I had some great people around me. One gentleman in particular took time out of his day just to teach me something in baseball. He didn't have to do it, and the fact that there's somebody out there that creates a platform for these young people. You get a standing know. And, so thank you for doing that. Anything you all need from me ever, just send me a text, call, whatever you need, I'm there.
My God. Hey, Langhorne, you don't know this, but I found your number. You the first person I contacted for the camp, because I was at the fax machine and you sent up your paperwork for your severance.
Hey, I know that. Send me my money.
Hey, Langhorne, I said, wait, and I was 24, 23 years old. I had just started the PA. I said, wait a minute, man, that's Reggie Langhorne. Let me call this dude. I was a little nervous. I said, all right, and you picked up the phone. All right, young fella, what you want? Oh, you the PA? Okay. Look, I'm like, Langhorne, I just got here like a week ago, bro. Relax.
Hey,
you agreed to be the spokesman of the camp. You came to a press conference. Man, your heart was warm and huge, man. And and that's just the epitome of how you guys are and how we all are from the 757. So again, man, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys, and hopefully we can do this again, man, and tell some more stories. We're gonna have other guys coming on, man, that we're just gonna touch everybody, man, give everybody the kudos they deserve while we have everybody here, man. And we just
How about that?
Yeah.
Well said.
We want to give everybody flowers while they're here, man, because we just want to share that love with everybody from 757. So thank you guys again, man. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
God.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Take care of yourself.
Oh,
DJ,
Yes,
good
sir.
seeing you, brother.
All right, Ray. I like that
Bird.
beard, man.
Crab and pride.
You know, I'm gonna wear my. I got a new Crab
Appreciate
Pride shirt that I got to rock on the next one.
Hey, Crab and pride.
All right, Langy.
All right, fellas.
All right.
All right.
Y'all take
All right,
care.
Reggie.
All right, take care.
I'll see you, Reggie.